At the dawn of the 4th century, when Christianity still faced harsh persecutions in the Roman Empire, a young woman was born in the city of Mérida in Hispania, whose name would be remembered forever, Eulalia. From childhood, she stood out for her piety and devotion to Christ, refusing to worship the pagan idols imposed by the government. Daughter of a noble Christian family, Eulalia grew up in a home where faith was fervently cultivated. Her parents, fearing the persecutions, tried to protect her, encouraging her to remain discreet about her belief. However, the young girl possessed a burning, determined spirit, incapable of remaining silent in the face of injustice. During the reign of Emperor Diocletian, the persecutions against Christians intensified. The governor of Mérida, Dacian, received strict orders to eradicate the Christian faith in the region. The city was gripped by fear, and many of the faithful hid or renounced their faith to escape death. Eulalia, however, did not fear the fury of her persecutors. At 12 years old, moved by unshakable zeal, she fled her parents' home and went to the governor's tribunal, determined to openly profess her faith. Her courage was astonishing for such a young girl, but her determination came from the certainty that Christ was the only Lord. Upon appearing before the governor, Eulalia declared without hesitation that she was a Christian and that she would never sacrifice to the pagan gods. Her words were met with astonishment and fury. Dacian, seeing her so young and beautiful, tried to persuade her with promises of wealth and privileges if she denied her faith. Eulalia's response was firm and defiant. She rejected all the offers and proclaimed that she would never betray her lord. The governor, angered by her audacity, ordered that she be taken to the public square, where she was to be punished. Her martyrdom was about to begin. The soldiers stripped her and began to inflict terrible torments upon her. Eulalia remained steadfast, offering her suffering as a sacrifice to God. Each blow and each wound were met with prayers, while the astonished crowd looked on. Dacian, enraged by the young girl's resistance, ordered that her flesh be torn with iron hooks. Blood ran onto the ground, but her lips still uttered praises to the Lord. Her strength and serenity in the face of pain were signs of her unwavering faith. Still unsatisfied, the executioners burned her body with blazing torches, trying to make her succumb. The flames consumed her skin, but Eulalia, with her eyes turned toward heaven, continued her prayer, asking the Most High for strength. In the midst of her martyrdom, a miracle occurred. Tradition tells that, as she breathed her last, a white dove emerged from her mouth and flew toward the heavens, symbolizing the purity of her soul and her glorious entrance into paradise. The saint's body, fallen upon the snow that unexpectedly covered the ground, was a sign to the faithful. Many saw in this a divine testimony of her holiness, and her memory was immediately venerated by the Christians of the region. Her parents, upon finding their daughter's lifeless body, wept but also rejoiced, for they knew she had attained eternal glory. Her example of faith and courage spread quickly, inspiring others to remain steadfast in the face of persecution. Eulalia's martyrdom deeply moved the Christian community, and her fame soon crossed the borders of Hispania. Her tomb became a site of pilgrimage, where many sought her intercession and protection. Over the centuries, devotion to Saint Eulalia grew, and several churches were dedicated to her, especially in Spain and France. Her name was invoked by those who faced trials and persecutions for their faith. In Barcelona, a young woman also named Eulalia suffered a similar martyrdom, and for this reason, the stories of the two saints often intertwine. Both were recognized by the Church as examples of Christian purity and courage. The iconography of Saint Eulalia often depicts her as a young woman dressed in white, holding a cross and a palm, symbols of her martyrdom. In some images, the white dove that emerged from her mouth at the moment of death is also present. In the 7th century, Saint Isidore of Seville wrote about Saint Eulalia, solidifying her place in the history of the Church. He exalted her courage and her unconditional love for Christ, inspiring generations of the faithful to follow her example. During the Middle Ages, her devotion intensified even more. Relics attributed to the saint were taken to various parts of Europe, and her name was mentioned in hymns and liturgical prayers. In Mérida, her hometown, the basilica dedicated to her became one of the main pilgrimage centers of the Iberian Peninsula. The faithful visited her tomb, seeking blessings and protection against the enemies of the faith. The cult of Saint Eulalia remained alive through the centuries and was officially recognized by the Church. Her feast day is celebrated on December 10th, the date on which her memory is honored with masses and processions in various parts of the world. Besides Spain, France also adopted Santa Eulalia as patron of some cities. Her story was carried by missionaries and spread among Christians in different regions. In times of religious persecution, her example was recalled as a testimony of fidelity to Christ. Many martyrs followed in her footsteps, preferring death rather than renouncing the faith. Saint Eulalia's story also inspired artists and writers. Poets, such as Prudentius in the 4th century, composed verses in her honor, extolling her bravery and her total surrender to God. Her image became a symbol of the fight against idolatry and oppression, and her intercession is frequently sought by those who face difficulties in Christian life. To this day, Saint Eulalia remains a beacon of hope for the faithful, showing that even in youth it is possible to be an example of holiness and surrender to God. Her name remains alive in the Church's tradition, remembered as a witness of unconditional love for Christ. Devotion to Saint Eulalia was not confined to her native land, but spread throughout Christendom, becoming an example of courage and faith. In the following centuries, her story was transmitted orally and through writings that praised her martyrdom as a testimony of eternal glory. Her name came to appear in ancient Christian martyrologies, being remembered among the most illustrious saints of the early Church. The Church officially recognized her sanctity and encouraged her veneration, further strengthening the faith of persecuted Christians. During the Visigothic period in the Iberian Peninsula, Christian kings promoted the construction of churches in her honor, consolidating her importance in popular religiosity. In Mérida, her basilica became a pilgrimage center, where miracles were attributed to her intercession. The cult of Saint Eulalia also expanded to Barcelona, where a cathedral was dedicated to her name. Relics of her body were transferred to that city, reinforcing the devotion of the faithful and the spiritual connection between the two cities that honor her as patroness. During the Muslim invasions in the Iberian Peninsula, many Christians sought refuge under the protection of the martyr saints, and Saint Eulalia was invoked as a shield against the enemies of the faith. Her example inspired Christian resistance and hope in the restoration of religious freedom. In medieval times, her feast day was celebrated with great solemnity, including processions, liturgical songs, and acts of piety. The faithful gathered to recall her martyrdom and ask for her intercession in the face of life's hardships. Poets and chroniclers of the era praised her courage and purity, ensuring that her story was perpetuated among new generations. In many places, her image was carried through the streets during festivities, being venerated with respect and devotion. In Christian iconography, Saint Eulalia is often depicted holding a cross and a palm, symbols of martyrdom, in addition to the white dove that appeared at the moment of her death. This image became a sign of hope for those who face tribulations because of their faith. Barcelona's cathedral, dedicated to Saint Eulalia, became one of the main sanctuaries in Spain. Her tomb, located in the crypt of the cathedral, continues to be visited by pilgrims who seek her intercession and give thanks for blessings received. Among the miracles attributed to Saint Eulalia are the healing of the sick, protection against natural disasters, and intervention in times of war. Her spiritual presence is felt by those who trust in her intercession before God. During the Reconquista, Christian soldiers frequently invoked Saint Eulalia before battles. It was believed that her protection helped ensure victory over the enemies of the faith, bolstering the warrior's courage and reinforcing popular devotion. In modern times, devotion to Saint Eulalia continued to be celebrated, especially in Spain and France. Churches and chapels were built in her honor, and her feast day remains one of the most important dates in the liturgical calendar in various localities. Her story also inspired literature and sacred art. Renowned painters depicted her martyrdom in beautiful canvases, transmitting her story to future generations through religious painting. In Barcelona, during the festivities in her honor, the streets filled with the faithful who participate in processions and acts of devotion. The city unites in prayer, recalling its patroness and thanking her for her protection through the centuries. Saint Eulalia is often invoked as the patroness of Christian youth, for despite her young age, she demonstrated a mature and unbreakable faith. Her testimony teaches that holiness has no age, and that fidelity to Christ should be a priority at all stages of life. Her example is also recalled in times of religious persecution, when Christians in various parts of the world faced challenges similar to those she endured. Her martyrdom encourages the faithful to stand firm in their faith, regardless of difficulties. Many holy women of the early church followed Eulalia's path, giving their lives for Christ and strengthening the tradition of martyrdom as the highest expression of love for God. Her legacy spans the centuries, keeping the flame of faith alive. Christian spirituality sees in Saint Eulalia a model of purity, courage, and total surrender to God. Her life is an invitation for everyone to strive to live faithfully to Christ's teachings, even in the face of the world's trials. In modern times, when faith is often challenged by ideologies contrary to Christian values, Saint Eulalia's example resonates powerfully, reminding us that true freedom lies in following God's will above any earthly imposition. Her martyrdom continues to be studied by theologians and historians, who analyze its importance in the context of Roman persecutions and its impact on shaping Christian identity in Spain and Europe. In many Catholic schools, Saint Eulalia is presented as an example to young people, encouraging them to live with courage and fidelity to Christian principles. Her story inspires students to defend the faith with love and determination. The faithful who visit her sanctuaries bear witness to favors received through her intercession. Many report physical and spiritual healings, reaffirming their belief in the power of prayer and the communion of saints. During Holy Week in some regions of Spain, her story is dramatized in plays and processions, recalling her suffering and her surrender to God. These acts of popular piety reinforce devotion and the sense of Christian community. Saint Eulalia is also invoked as the protector of victims of religious persecution, being a symbol of resistance and faith in the face of oppression. Her life is a reminder that loving Christ is worth any sacrifice. Even after centuries have passed since her death, Saint Eulalia remains one of the greatest examples of holiness in the Church. Her memory is celebrated with fervor, and her story remains alive in Christian tradition, inspiring the faithful around the world. Throughout the history of the Church, Saint Eulalia remained a symbol of resistance and unwavering faith. Her life and martyrdom are remembered not only as a story of sacrifice, but as a testimony of absolute love for Christ, capable of overcoming any earthly suffering. In times of hardship, her intercession is sought by those who face trials, especially young people who wish to live their faith authentically. Many see in her an inspiration to remain faithful to God, even when confronted with challenges and temptations. Devotion to Saint Eulalia is not restricted to the Iberian Peninsula. In various parts of Europe, her story was spread by missionaries and pilgrims, and churches in her honor were erected, keeping her memory alive in many Christian nations. In Rome, her story is also known and venerated. The Church has always recognized her as one of the great martyrs of the early centuries, and her name appears in ancient martyrologies, being celebrated in prayers and masses dedicated to saints. During the Renaissance, her life was the subject of many works of art, Painters and sculptors depicted her martyrdom with great detail, seeking to convey the depth of her surrender to God and the strength of her Christian witness. In Barcelona, devotion to Saint Eulalia intertwines with the city's history. The Cathedral of the Holy Cross and Saint Eulalia, known for its impressive Gothic architecture, houses her relics and remains one of the main pilgrimage centers in the region. The cathedral's crypt, where her body rests, is a place of intense prayer. The faithful light candles and ask for favors through her intercession, keeping alive the flame of the faith that Saint Eulalia so zealously defended with her life. In Mérida, her hometown, the cult of the saint never ceased. The Basilica of Saint Eulalia, built on the site of her martyrdom, still welcomes pilgrims who wish to learn about her story and feel the spiritual presence of the young martyr. Among the most striking accounts of Saint Eulalia is the tradition stating that, after her martyrdom, a snowfall covered her body, as a divine sign of her purity and holiness. This detail is often recalled in her iconography. Her image is often associated with redemptive suffering, a reflection of Christ's passion. Her sacrifice was not in vain, but became a source of inspiration for countless generations desiring to follow the Lord's footsteps. In addition to being the patroness of Barcelona and Mérida, Saint Eulalia is invoked as a protector of children and adolescents, being considered a spiritual guide for young people who wish to live a life of holiness. In some places, her feast day is celebrated with enactments of her martyrdom, processions, and solemn masses. Such celebrations reinforce the importance of her story and allow new believers to learn about her courage and devotion. Over the centuries, her devotion survived persecutions and cultural changes. Even in periods of secularization, the memory of Saint Eulalia remains alive, reminding everyone that true faith transcends any earthly imposition. In modern times, Saint Eulalia is a beacon for those who suffer religious persecution worldwide. Her story resonates with Christians who face discrimination and violence for their faith, encouraging them to remain firm in Christ. Her life is also a reminder to those who live in societies where the Christian faith is often ridiculed or minimized. Saint Eulalia teaches that fidelity to God must always be the priority, regardless of external pressures. The Catholic Church continues to honor her as an example of purity and courage. Her deeds are recalled not only on her liturgical feast day, but also in homilies, theological studies, and popular devotions. In some places, young people are encouraged to follow Saint Eulalia's example through prayer groups and catechesis. Her story is used to show that even a child can achieve holiness with faith and determination. Saint Eulalia's figure also appears in medieval manuscripts and ancient devotional books. Her story was carefully preserved through the centuries, ensuring that her memory would never be lost. In many churches, her relics are exposed on festive days, giving the faithful the opportunity to venerate her spiritual presence. Many report feeling great peace when approaching her sacred remains. Even after so many centuries, Saint Eulalia remains a model for those who wish to live an authentic faith. Her testimony crosses generations and remains a light on the path of those who seek holiness. Her martyrdom shows that the Christian life requires courage, especially in times of persecution. Saint Eulalia did not hesitate to give herself completely to God, showing that faith must be lived with radical commitment. Saint Eulalia's example is often compared to other Christian martyrs, such as Saint Agnes and Saint Cecilia, who were also young and faced terrible torments out of love for Christ. Her story inspires not only Catholics, but also Christians of different denominations, who recognize in her an example of fidelity to God. Her testimony transcends boundaries and continues to touch hearts. Today, Saint Eulalia's message is more relevant than ever. In a world where faith is often seen as outdated, her story reminds us that loving God is worth any sacrifice. Each year, new devotees discover her story and are enchanted by her bravery. Her name continues to be invoked in prayers, and her memory is passed down from generation to generation. ensuring that her light will never fade. The remembrance of Saint Eulalia continues to shine like a star in the history of Christianity, guiding those who seek a firm and authentic faith. Her life teaches us that fidelity to God is the greatest treasure anyone can possess. In times of doubt and challenge, her story reminds us that following Christ may demand sacrifices, but the eternal reward far outweighs any earthly suffering. Her courage echoes in the hearts of those who seek to live a life of holiness. Tradition teaches us that after her martyrdom, devotion to Saint Eulalia spread quickly. Her name was inscribed in liturgical calendars, and her story was recorded by Christian writers who extolled her holiness. During the Middle Ages, pilgrims traveled great distances to visit her shrines and pray before her relics. Accounts of miracles strengthened the people's faith, and Saint Eulalia's fame crossed borders. In Barcelona, the Cathedral of Saint Eulalia became a symbol of the faithful's devotion. Built with majestic Gothic architecture, it is one of Spain's most important churches, attesting to the city's deep veneration for its patroness. Festivals in honor of Saint Eulalia are still celebrated with great fervor. Processions, reenactments of her story, and liturgical acts reinforce the importance of her legacy and keep her memory alive in the hearts of the faithful. In many artistic representations, Saint Eulalia appears with a serene expression, even amidst suffering. This reflects her complete surrender to God and her trust in the promise of eternal life. Her iconographic attributes include the palm of martyrdom, the cross, and the white dove that appeared at her death. Each of these elements underscores the spiritual depth of her life and death. The cult of Saint Eulalia is not limited to the Catholic Church alone. In some Orthodox communities, she is also recognized as a martyr, and her story is respected as an example of unwavering faith. In the modern world, Saint Eulalia continues to serve as inspiration for those who face religious persecutions. Her story encourages Christians to remain faithful, even in the face of adversities that may arise. Many young people find in Saint Eulalia an example to follow. Her age, her courage, and her determination demonstrate that holiness is not reserved only for the elderly, but can be lived from childhood onward. Each year, churches around the world celebrate her memory with special prayers. The faithful light candles and ask for her intercession, trusting in the protection and assistance of the saint who did not fear to bear witness to her faith. During the Council of Trent, the Church reaffirmed the importance of martyrs in Christian tradition. Saint Eulalia was cited as an example of holiness, who should be remembered and venerated with deep respect. In some Spanish cities, Saint Eulalia's feast is accompanied by traditional dances, religious songs, and portrayals of her martyrdom, reinforcing the devotion and love that people feel for their patroness. Relics attributed to Saint Eulalia were taken to various locations, allowing more faithful to venerate her and seek her intercession. These sacred objects are guarded with care and reverence by the Church. Even in times of secularization, her story continues to be passed on in catechesis and Catholic schools. Teachers and priests speak of her courage, encouraging young people to defend their faith with love and determination. Her liturgical feast, celebrated on December 10th in Mérida and on February 12th in Barcelona, brings together thousands of the faithful who give thanks for the favors received and renew their devotion to this young martyr. Saint Eulalia teaches us that faith must be lived authentically and without fear of the consequences. Her testimony reminds us that love for Christ must stand above any earthly good. Her example is a response to the challenges of the world today, where faith is often tested. Saint Eulalia reminds us that true freedom lies in following God's will, regardless of the circumstances. In her short life, Eulalia earned the crown of eternal glory. Her story continues to echo as a call to holiness for all Christians who wish to follow Christ's steps without hesitation. Her martyrdom is one of the most beautiful testimonies to the power of Christian faith. Even though she was young, she faced death with bravery, reminding us that God's grace strengthens the hearts of those who trust in Him. The Church has always encouraged the veneration of martyred saints, and Saint Eulalia remains among the most admired examples of purity and fidelity to God. Her name is remembered with honor and gratitude. Today, her legacy remains alive in churches, schools, religious communities, and in the hearts of the faithful. Her witness transcends the centuries and continues to inspire those who desire to live for Christ. May her story continue to strengthen Christians on their journey, reminding us that it is worth remaining faithful even when the path becomes difficult. Saint Eulalia teaches us that true victory lies in eternity. Saint Eulalia, Martyr of Christ, intercede for us. May your example of courage and faith guide us on the journey of life, and may we, like you, live and die for the love of God. Amen.